Good afternoon or good evening, everyone, depending on where you are. I'm Maria Daycake. I'm the interim director of the Abu Suleiman Center for Global Islamic Studies. And we are a research center based at George Mason University, and we engage in a number of projects. As a center, we run conferences and seminars, but we also have a guest lecture series where we host between 10 and 12 speakers, either virtually or in person, throughout the academic year. And you all have the honor of being present here at our final guest lecture for this particular academic year. And so we're very happy to have with us Kirsten Scheid, Professor Kirsten Scheid from the American University in Beirut. And I will let my colleague, Yasmin Ipek, introduce our speaker.
Thank you so much, Dr. Maria Daycake. I'm very, very happy to be here, and thank you so much for helping us arrange this. And I want to thank everyone, the whole team at the center for helping us to organize this event. We are very happy to have Dr. Kirsten Scheid with us. So I will be hosting and moderating this event for today. So let me briefly introduce Dr. Kirsten Scheid. I have had the honor and privilege to have known her for some time since my fieldwork in Lebanon, and it's so good to have her with us to talk about her wonderful book. Professor Dr. Kirsten Scheid is a professor of anthropology and art studies at the American University of Beirut. She has authored Fantasmic Objects, Art and Sociality from Lebanon, 1920-1950, which came from Indiana University Press in 2022. And she created Partisans of the Nude, an Arab art genre in an era of contest, 1920-1960, from Wallach Art Gallery in New York. She co-curated historical modernisms in the Middle East for RT East's virtual gallery in 2008. The Arab Nude, The Artist as Awakener in 2016, and Jerusalem Actual and Possible, 2018. She was the Clark Oakley Fellow at the Clark Art Institute and Williams College for 2019. Mm-hmm. Dr. Kirsten Scheid also co-founded a cultural resource center and an Arabic children's book line, Hikayat Walad min Beirut, in 2004. The title of Dr. Kirsten Scheid's talk today is Art Acts, Taswir, and Local Art History, Studying Lebanon Through Modern Art and Vice Versa. Everyone, please help me in congratulating Dr. Scheid, welcoming Dr. Scheid.
Thank you so much, Yasmin. So I am very grateful to the Abu Suleiman Center for Global Islamic Studies for inviting me. It's the most delightful thing when you write something, especially something kind of extended, like a book, is when you realize that people are actually reading it. And Yasmin Ipek was one of the most enthusiastic people to reach out and let me know about her reading the work, and has convinced me that speaking today with everyone will help share that enthusiasm. I'm also grateful to Maria Daycake and to Aisha Noor Sonmez-Kara for inviting me, and to Maysoum Mahmoud Qadri for managing the communications. Okay, so the title, Art Acts, Taswir, and Local Art History, has these are three concepts, and I hope these are your takeaways. Just to say it straight up from the beginning, in case the talk runs long or becomes too winding to follow, these are the three things that I hope you will be able to think about more richly after this talk. But I believe in starting with art, not with concepts. So let's look at an artwork together and allow its story to introduce you to my book. Yasmin, can you take us to the next slide, please?
Sure.
So These are these are newspaper photographs for the installation in 1983 of a sculpture called Poem by Salwa Raude Shukher. It was part of the installation of the sculpture was part of a beautification project, a national reunification project after the Israeli invasion of 1982 and the withdrawal, and then the assassination of the Lebanese president. And you'll just see if you read, and I've organized my images mostly to work from right to left, as does Arabic script and as would Arabic reading of these images work. So starting on the right, you'll see a helicopter dropping, an army helicopter that's dropping gardenia petals onto a gathered crowd. And you'll then see a close-up of the sculpture under a veil. And then in the third picture from the right, you see the artist, Salwa Raude Shukher, taking off the last bit of that sculpture. And you can see then the sculpture revealed and how large it is, how it towers over people gathered around its wide base at a public roundabout in Beirut. And now I'd like us to go to the third slide, which has a video, which was produced to introduce another post-war audience in 1996 to Salwa Raude Shukher as an artist. And this was, again, a national reunification project. But as you listen, and it takes about 5 minutes, you'll notice that there's some sense of something awful, something foreboding. You'll hear it in the music, you'll hear it in Shukher's voice, and you'll see it in the subtitles as she talks about this project of a public installation. Yasmin, do you mind going to the next slide? And I think you have to press on the play button. We should hear it.
Are you hearing it?
Now I am, yes.
We are not hearing. I don't think all of us.
Yeah, I'm not hearing anymore.
Dr. Yasmin, when you share screen, if you can do share sound also, not just share screen,
Yes,
but share
yes.
sound also.
I should do that, but okay, just give me a second. I should stop sharing and then I should come back.
I
Because
apologize for
no,
complicating.
totally fine. But the thing is, okay, I saw that option now. Okay, so that should work. I'm coming back. So just let me know if you're hearing.
Yes.
Yes.
لما بكون عم بشتغل ما بعرف شو عم بعمل، لكن ما بتخلص الا تخلص هالوحده الوحده الجوهريه بين الشكل بين النتوء وبين الداخل. هالفراغات تلعب مع بعضها فتعمل لحن يلي بيقول لك انا بدي اصرخ.
And here we get to see how Shukher actually handled her sculptures and conceived of them as pieces that can come together into new shapes and never be totally united, but they'll have an essential unity. These separate pieces so that they're really melded and they'll have reason to draw together.
الحواس هن في دمج عندنا نحن. لو وانا يمكن عجبني اني اخذ سكولتور، انه السكولتور ما كان شيء مستحدث. يعني عندنا ما في هال تراديسيون ايه تقليد، ما فيها التقليد السكولتور. انا اخذته كمان تحدي انه اذا كان فيي انا بوسط السكولتور اني احط كل شيء يلي انا بعتقده من جوهرنا. كل شيء في ناس وكتبوا كل الوقت يقولوا لازم منحوتات سلوى بيصيروا بالساحات العامة. ما صارت ولا مرة إلا هالمرة إجوا اللايونيس بدهم يحطوا شيء هدية لبيروت، واختاروني كفنانة أعطيهم. طبيعي ما رحبت بالفكرة أنا، يعني مع إني يعني أي فنان ما بيحب إنه تكون أعماله موجودة بالساحات العامة. هاي لأول مرة من 40 سنة، لأول مرة بنحط لي قطعة في بيروت.
طيب ليش اختاروها تماما مثل بيروت؟ هل فيها جرح بيروت؟
هني بدهم الإعمار، وأنا عندي هالتفاؤل بالحياة كمان. وبعدين في عندي أنا التركيب، وحدة فوق الثاني فوق الثالثة. هلا هي 4 بيجوز إني أعملها 10، يعني بتقدر تكبر وتعلى لأنه فيها طاقة النمو. لأنه أنا هذا هدفي، إنه النحت ما يكون جامد وما يكون كتل ما إلها حياة. يعني أنا بدي إياها حياة، وكل شيء له حياة بيكبر.
There's that try suggesting that something isn't going to work. We can stop it here, Yasmin.
Sure. Should I move to the next slide?
No, we can leave it here for a second. So you start to hear that everything that's living grows, and yet what we learned by the end of this 1996 interview is that within a few months, the sculpture had been defaced or had been vandalized. So yes, Yasmin, now you could go to the next slide, please. And we have a picture of that. On the right, the sculpture, black paint has been thrown on it. And then a few weeks after that, the sculpture disappeared entirely from this roundabout with no explanation. So that when I met Chouclair in the 90s, she told me, this was the one time my art was going to appear in public, and yet it disappeared. So for her, this was a story of how there is never art in Lebanon. Lebanon can't host art. There's no art here. And this confronted me with kind of an ethical issue. Chouclair was not the only artist to share this. It was perhaps the most dramatic story, but many people, gallerists and artists and art collectors, would tell me, in addition to the lay people, that there just is no art here. If you want to study art, you need to go back to New York. And I had to ask myself, what does one do with this kind of an assertion? If you take it as a description, it can have the danger of becoming a prescription, of becoming a way of deciding how to treat Lebanon as a place that cannot support art. And then we think about art as one of these indices of civilization, of civil unity, which is why the sculpture was being installed as part of the National Reunification Project. So I want to share this kind of quandary of the missing sculpture with my audience, to invite people to think about this phrase of no art here, and how an anthropologist addresses such phrases, such expressions of abjection, such assertions of a lack. And as anthropologists, we listen to what happens as people say it, and what kind of relationships form, and what sorts of appeals get made. How there's a contest over the future of here in Chouclair's talking about no art here. It becomes a question to the listener, what are you going to do about that? What kind of person will you be now that you know about this? And will you be a no art person? And this was a discussion that was as urgent in the 1990s when I started my research, and Beirut was in reconstruction after the Civil War's official end and the return of an influx of returning migrants building their country and lamenting losses while trying to make a break from their past and also decorating their houses. And so this was an urgent issue of discussion then and now, and as I will assert, it has long been an urgent matter. So there's a vibrant art scene in Beirut today that's quite well known internationally, and there was in the 90s as well. There has been for a long time, and so that coexists with this assertion of no art. And so I was thinking about that and reading this article which condemns the audience for 25 years of not understanding Choukher's art. And I was trying to understand how to deal with this. I didn't want to be somebody writing in my notes, there's no art here. I felt that would be the stance of a white woman fostering Orientalism, and that's certainly not the kind of stance I'd been trained as an anthropologist to take. But then thinking of this assertion anthropologically, it came to be, for me, not a description or an accurate representation, but more an assertion, and as I was suggesting above, the beginning of a series of relationships. And I think, and this is how I came to think about representations generally as creative and productive, and collaboratively produced with anthropologists. So no art here, and Yasmin, I'm going to ask you to press forward a few times, but the same slide will, yes, exactly, right. So no art here became no art with a dash between them, which became a practice of no art rather than a description of a thing and a way of making here. So no art is a certain kind of art, and one that's perhaps best known for its troublesome and disquieting nature. Just like the word tomboy, or in Arabic, Hassan Sabi, where tom doubles the boy because the speaker discerns a girl, no emphasizes rather than negating something about art. And I would say that no art here, the no doubles the capacity of art to reject givens and to complicate presence. So it becomes a way of questioning what is the here and what are we doing to make it with our interactions that revolve around art. It's importantly then, just to summarize, no art is not a description or a representation of what we actually confront, but of what might come about depending upon how we respond. And that takes me, thank you, Yasmin, to the next slide, to this idea of art acts, which is the first concept from the title. Art acts, well, if an artwork is labor that's been executed in art and treated as art, then an art act is the labor that art mobilizes, perhaps not intentionally, but consequentially. So for example, audience feelings are part of an art act, and sense making and social network forming are all part of an art act. And so
you were frozen for a second, Kirsten.
Okay. Am I back now?
Yeah, you're back right now. You were frozen for just 2-3 seconds.
Okay, yeah, the internet connection gave me a little unstable sign. All right. So artworks prompt aesthetic encounters with objects, and I want to distinguish that from art acts, which create new spatial and experiential relations among artists and audiences and societies through feelings, through sense making, through relationships that can become social networks. And Yasmin, there's one more click, I think, for this slide, or maybe two. An art act, okay, and one more, right? An art act extends beyond a material object and beyond a maker's intent. In fact, an art act doesn't have an inherent stopping point. And so where we often kind of look at an artwork and we see an object and we think, okay, that's the limit of it, you know, the end of the canvas or the pedestal that the sculpture stands on, that's the limit of the artwork. An art act is a tool that I developed for thinking about all this other kind of work that gets generated when audiences meet artworks. And an art act becomes a way then for attending, well, it means that attending to art allows one a lens onto a society that you can see as in the making. And studying art acts allows us to look for interactions that form relations between people and social subjects and people's imaginations. And I hope that thinking with art acts offers lessons for all manners of scholars of the Middle East and of Islam, not least political scientists and economists. And I'll focus today on one picture that I think gives an example of how that might happen. But just to summarize this part, I want to say that the disappearance of Choukher's sculpture, which is we do not know where it is, and we do not know that it was destroyed, although people told me maybe a rocket hit it or a truck crashed into it. But this disappearance should not end our inquiry into modern Arab art or societies and their relationship with art, but should rather launch an investigation involving social lives with art, imaginations of people in terms of art and civilization, and demands that they place on each other. Like, how are we going to be citizens together? How are you going to share this public space? And how will we raise our children? And I argue that Lebanese sociality and people came into being by discussing these issues with art as an important nexus that is too frequently overlooked by anthropologists, other scholars, and other concerned parties. We could go to the next slide now, please, Yasmin. So, and how much time do I still have if we're now at 12:30 your time?
I think it would be helpful to maybe finish it around 50-55, if that's fine.
Yeah, okay, that's totally fine.
Global,
Okay.
something between 50-55 would be good. Yeah, thank you.
All right, so now I want to talk a bit about my methodology in the book. So although anthropologists generally conduct field work and study living people, as I know, for example, Dr. Ipek herself did, my wanting to study an idea and its biography meant I had to work historically with archives. But I let the words in the archives inform me rather than try to translate them into what I already knew or thought art history should be about. And the anthropologist Fred Myers has blazed the path for studying a local art history, by which he meant one undertaken from the vantage point of the producers and not based on the march of world historical ages of art's development. And I think one could expand to other kinds of history, for example, political history and economic history and et cetera, where we have these teleologies that tell us what kind of phases to look for and the criteria and what to expect. This local art history includes listening closely and taking the terms that people use as part of the formation of what they do. So how they talk as shaping what they do and their understanding as part of this history's coming into being. We could have the next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, just here. So I heard a word like Taswir, and similarly words like Surah, Lawha, Rasam, and I thought they were translations for words I knew in English, but when I listened to them in Arabic, they combined things in unexpected ways. For example, the word Rasam, which can mean like a painting, would mean an official edict and the fee for recognition, like a tariff. So my method was to stick with the associations that are afforded by Arabic as people have been speaking them across time, so as they differently evolve. So the next slide, please. And when I say when I say picture in English, I tap into a Renaissance theory of the picture window and an Enlightenment theory of hidden truths that need to be brought to light. for both of these Enlightenment and Renaissance theories, seeing and being separate into two realms. In the former, seeing is duplicitous, and the latter is the only source of truth. And this model allows things to be either real or false, thus to produce a kind of visibility or way of, interpreting what we see. And if something is real, we assume that its visibility is correct. And if it's false, then any visibility it has is like a simulacra, and it's deceptive. And according to such a model, separating seeing from being, art is squarely deceptive, and you can't get truth in art from this kind of approach. And so it's not a surprise that rationalist Enlightenment thinkers launched their objective inquiries, seeking to bring hidden truths bring to light hidden truths that normal mortals ignored because they didn't have equipped sight. And the Enlightenment is associated with all kinds of sight enhancing tools. But this approach, or this theory about images and visibility, is not the only one. It's not the only model that exists in the world for making images or conjuring visions. And whereas the images of the Renaissance, such as you'd see in church paintings, have generally been taken as visibilizing representations of holy truths that could be seen in scriptures and law, a surah demands interaction to form into visions not otherwise seen. So surah is the word, I have it in Arabic on the right side of the screen, in transliteration in the middle. And it's the word that's most often used to translate picture and is translated as picture. But I'm arguing that a surah demands interaction to form into visions that one would not otherwise see. Neither can you see them in the artwork, nor would the person viewing them see them in their own mind's eye without this interaction. And a surah then is an image that arises from our perceptual and conceptual capacities. So I was looking at early 20th century Arabic writing pedagogues who talked about at-tasawwur, which is the second word down. And they argued that this is the capacity people have at tasawwur as a capacity to take in from the phenomenal world that gives you, palpable things that touch you, and to create an imaginal world, or at taswir, which is the bottom word, meaning a world that's filled with things that don't exist yet in the world, but could be. Taswir is of the world that we live in, but it's not there. And it relates us to the world that we live in and makes us responsible for the materialization of the tasawwur, our capacity for putting together perception and conception. So taswir, that bottom term, is neither merely descriptive nor observational. It involves seeing through art to what is not present, which gives us a new way of thinking about that missing sculpture, both the sculpture that was present and the sculpture that's apparently missing. To go back to what Salwa Rauda-Shukhair was saying about her sculpture, the one you see on the right that has disappeared, and she was saying it was no art here. No art only appears to form this assertion, this idea, only appears to inform us of an absence if we look for the normal kind of picture, the picture window picture that we associate with Renaissance thinking and representational theories of art. So if you look on the left side of the screen, you'll see an image by Walid Rad, an artist who's been working with my archives and helping me think about these materials for like 2 decades now. And he made this as the cover of the book. If we treat that as a picture of Salwa Rauda-Shukhair's missing sculpture, it's a bad picture. It's made out of announcements cut from newspaper clippings that I had gathered when I was trying to track down art in Lebanon. But bad picture as it may be, it could be a surah, a very productive surah that can generate art acts worth contemplating, seeing through art to what is not present and how people become responsible for making their social worlds. So my translation then for sur, the plural of surah, is phantasmic object. And phantasmic objects demand you see through art to what is not there but could be there. Phantasmic objects demand you continually account for contingency and the ongoing possibilities of the world. What art acts do you engage in when you're confronted with these sur? And this was a question for me as an anthropologist trying to write about this art world. And I hope it becomes a question for readers as well. We can move to the next slide now. So what does a local art history of sur? Sorry about that, Yasmin. I guess I'd forgotten that those little phrases came up. Can we go to the entirely next slide now?
Oh, sure, sure.
Okay. So what does a local history of sur from 1920 to 1950 Lebanon offer? My dates 1920 to 1950 point to the period of Mandate Lebanon, when Lebanon was under tutorial control of the French authorities as designated in the Versailles Conference and administered by the League of Nations. And these were not supposed to be these mandates were not supposed to be direct colonization. They were supposed to be a step away from colonization, where civilized countries of Europe and the US would kind of give lessons or tutor well-identified groups of people who expressed national longing and belonging, but didn't yet demonstrate the capacity to manage that national existence. So the dates of the book date to this early nation forming period, which is kind of a liminal zone where people were talking about Lebanon, but it didn't have any concrete, clear existence, let alone roles and demands for its citizens to be. So my first chapter examines art exhibitions, and I was struck by the constant concern about who an audience would be and how they would act. And I was looking at art exhibitions in the 20s and 30s and 40s in particular. I was also struck by the exhibition guest registries that were shared with me from this time period, with entries from audiences affirming that they appreciated the artwork, but also fearing that other audiences, maybe ones who didn't even show up at the exhibition, would not only not appreciate art, but would mar national unity, harmony, and prosperity by not doing so. So I came to think of interactions at exhibitions as interocular moments when people are looking at each other, looking at pictures too, and constructing by this kind of triangulated looking a sense of collectivity and exclusivity in relation to specific artworks that would prick and rub and stroke certain sensual and sense-making knowledges that people brought, knowledges about the land around them, knowledges about how people dress and don't dress, about their social habits. And building on studies of vernacular, body, and performance art, which have all pushed the disciplinary boundaries for thinking about what and when and where art is, I came to attend particularly to forms of social exchange that would proliferate in exhibitions and question intersubjectivity and economies that related to these exhibitions. And I'm going to skip a story about Muslim scouts and the sheikh that wasn't allowed in the show and nearly destroyed the artist's career, and how people came to think of the art viewers that you see in the lower middle of this artwork as Druze, although people at the time would have thought of them as Sunni Muslim. And I want to go ahead to a particular artwork and remind you that none of these paintings that circulated at exhibitions in the 20s, 30s, and 40s were pictures, as in representations of a given Lebanon. They were sur of what Lebanon might be and how Lebanese might become. And they were active agents in creating Lebanon's ways of sociality that we might now associate with Lebanon. So I want to take us to February 1935, to an artwork by one of the artists I focus on in my book, Omar Onsi, as it showed up in the Sanaya exhibition space, in a space attended by a host of mandate personalities, including French authorities and local noblemen and women and political upstarts and intellectuals, Muslim scouts, and a group of people that Fouaz Trablsi, the historian of modern Lebanon, calls mudabbirin. Mudabbirin are people who had certain knowledges. They had invested in a knowledge economy, like learning other languages or learning how to do things to land, for example, and they would apply those knowledges upon commission from people who had money to hire them. So these people assemble around a landscape picture that I'm going to share with you. We could look at that next slide, please. Yasmin. Sorry, can you skip ahead to this is one I decided to, and we'll go again to another one.
This one? Do you want to use this one?
No, next after that. That's the space of the exhibition for Omar Onsi. So it's slide number 14. You've got 2 more to go through.
Can you say stop? I'm so sorry. I cannot see the slide numbers in the full screen. So this one possibly?
This one, yes. Okay.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you. So this picture appears in that exhibition space that you glimpsed just before. And I wonder, and I wanted to research what people might have seen and what art acts they found themselves contemplating when they were confronted with this picture, or when this picture hailed them, had them assemble around it, the way you saw people assembling around Choukler's sculpture at the beginning. I was introduced to this painting called Hula, which is the name of an area famous for a marsh in southern Lebanon and today's northern Israel. I was introduced to the painting in 1997 at another post-war reunification event celebrating Omar Onsi, the artist, his career. He was born in 1901 and died in 1969, and was hailed as the Cézanne, the French Impressionist master of Lebanon. People told me, look at this gorgeous picture, look at these masterful brushstrokes. But then they quickly let me know that the picture for them was haunted by a land transfer, the history of an unfortunate and for them tragic transfer of land from French Mandate Lebanon to Baron Rothschild's Palestine Jewish Colonization Association. So you could take this as a picture of a contested territory, a landscape that was hotly debated and transferred from the Lebanese concessionary for the Ottomans, a guy named Salim Ali Salem, to Baron Rothschild, who had already founded 4 Jewish settlements in the northwestern section of the Hula Valley toward a project of de facto Judaization. And if it's a picture, then you see it as something just there, and you have to go look for that piece of land. But if it's a surah, then it demands interaction to form into visions not otherwise seen. And remember that to engage in taswir is to stop not being aware of ongoing possibilities and to remove barriers to generating meaning. So ultimately, the importance of a surah lies not in what we see on its surface, unlike a picture, but what we do with it. Briefly, then, I want to suggest that Salim Ali Salem, he's this Zaim, or a leader, a person who becomes a leader not because of inherited wealth, but because he aggressively makes claims to leading people, presents himself as able to stand for others and guard their interest. And Salim Ali Salem was very capable of doing this. As a Sunni, he supported reforming Ottoman government, and he deputized for Beirut to the Ottoman parliament in 1914. As an Arab nationalist, he was jailed by the entrenched Turkish leadership for wanting an Arab nation within the Ottoman Empire. He was also jailed by French Mandate authorities for his ongoing political activism. But he was always, throughout all of this, a shrewd businessman who could convert his profits from the import economy into newly available land. And Hula was conceded to him by Ottoman authorities with a number of other people to drain the marsh and to develop into agricultural land. And the other thing about Salim Salam is that he was Omar Onsi's uncle. So we can think about Onsi visiting this. He is known to have gone to this place, this marsh, many times, and setting himself up on a road that leads east from the most fertile corner of the lake. He's straddling the brink between an imperiled sharecropping economy and indigenous renters, or Bedouin Arab, preliminary Jewish settlements, and the concessionaire, his uncle's own increasing confinement as a political agent on the northern side of the Palestine border that this area straddles. We can think about the artist standing, picking a spot above these craggy white stones, overlooking the valley, not looking at an inert terrain, but at a divinely activated element in an ongoing set of drastic ecological and political contests. So this marsh is also a site of malaria, of mosquitoes, of water buffalo herders, the Arab Zubayd tribe. And interestingly, Onsi, to make this picture, adopts that position of the Arab Zubayd tribe and he takes their subject position to let Lake Hula, which he called tabi'a, nature, imprint on him, on him, and to imprint its sacred traces as a site where a divine force has pressed the surface of the earth and is that imprint hasn't been marred yet by human activity. So we could go to the next slide to see a woodcut that gives us another version of this kind of image making process where the artist, the figure you see standing on the left, poses himself in a way to receive all the signs of divine glory, have them imprinted on his face and on his body, that he may then print them on the canvas as a kind of ongoing transitive process. The artist absorbs the scene, and I'm not going to get into all of the discussion that intellectuals had of how this divinely initiated process worked, but it gives us the sense that the artist is not a creator, the artist is a conveyor of divine creation. And in this sense, Onsi and his Muslim scout peers who adopted this habit of going to landscapes where they could see manazir tabi'a, or landscapes, images of nature. So Onsi and his scout peers committed themselves to a higher power in the literal meaning of Islam by making such pictures and by providing viewers with a stimulus to commit themselves as well. So Hula invites viewers to reflect on mortals' relationship to divinity. It is full of ayat, or signs of the divine, from the flood to the fertilizing rain to the blessing of the marsh. And Onsi's role is not to rival the divine imprint, but to convey it. And we could think about how he prepares his palette and how he actually applied brushstrokes as part of opening his heart to the echo of the universe, as he said, or he calls upon viewers to read the open book that the creator has printed, thereby likening the landscape to the Quran. So I also think that in looking at this insertion into economic debates, we're able to think with art acts here about a new kind of Islam that Sunnis in particular were taking upon themselves at a time when the caliphate was 11 years in the past, and had been abolished, and Sunni Muslims in Beirut are no longer responding to an Ottoman sultanate. And if we can go to the next slide again, we'll see Hula, and we'll think about this as a submission, an exercise in submission, speaking to those mudabarin, the group that always risk themselves of being accused of materialism and selfishness. And I don't have a final end to this story, but I suggest in the book that this is one example where an artwork opens up questions of class relations rather than telling us or it gives us ways to question what we know about those class relations now. And I suggest that the image may have reminded all the viewers around it about the immaterial and pious basis for becoming people who could contribute to their society and to their sovereignty in that ultimately. To just very quickly bring us back to Salwa Radu Shukher, she was a student of Omar Onsi. She also studied in France, but she first studied with Onsi and another Muslim scout, Moustapha Farrouk. And I think her work was also imbued with this quest for thinking about the artist's role as one of conveying connection and enacting or triggering capacities for thinking about what the world would become. And we need to skip ahead about 4 clicks now, please. Yasmin. So here, just before that one. Yes, thank you. So this was an image from the 100th celebration of Shukher's birthday in June. Sorry, the date is wrong on the slide. It's not June 2023, it's June 2016. And I shared that video of Shukher because I wanted people to think with her and the generativity that she proposes for sculpture, rather than to lament only the loss of this public artwork. And after the conference ended, you can see that a figure has stood up in the lower right corner. A woman named Ines Halabi shot up and she said, I have to speak. I've been so affected by seeing Salwa speak and seeing her sculpture. Salwa was a friend of mine and I know where the sculpture is. And she reported a totally new history or future for the sculpture. She gave us the name of a person responsible for its new location, and we haven't been able to retrieve the sculpture, which is a gift to the city of Beirut yet. But we've opened up something that I was invited to think about very seriously, and I hope people listening to will think about with me and will take on as part of how they think about what's happening in their lives, and particularly in relation to the Middle East, to Lebanon, to Palestine, and what we can learn by taking anthropology as both a creative and a responsible discipline. So thank you.
Thank you so much. This was a very insightful and thought-provoking talk. I really appreciate it. And